CIPD Trust. And sharing the expertise of people that work in HR is a kind of key part of what we do at the CIPD Trust. And these webinars, we're trying to give like a behind the scenes look into the recruitment process and what that means for you as someone who's returning to work following a career break. So we've got some really great speakers today who are going to talk us through some things about how to do that job search, how we get going. So I've got a couple of housekeeping things to begin with. We're recording this session, but cameras and microphones have been disabled, so no attendees will appear on the recording. Please use the chat to ask questions and make comments. Just be aware that we might read those out on the recording. And my colleague Resine will be posting tips and links in the chat, so keep an eye out for her. We're going to be talking through questions that were submitted when people registered for this webinar. We've hundreds of questions submitted, so we won't be able to answer every single one, I'm sorry, but we have tried to pick ones that we think will be the most universally applicable. We had quite a lot of versions of the same question, so we've tried to boil them down to some really great ones. And if we have time towards the end, we'll answer some questions from the chat, so please do share anything that you might have. And if following this webinar you feel that you'd really benefit from some one-to-one support, please do sign up for our Bridging the Gap mentoring program. You can get up to 6 months support with your job search from one of our fabulous HR mentors. The link is in the chat, so please do click through and sign up. So today we're going to be talking about career gaps and how to talk about them. And when you've been out of work for a while, that gap on your CV can feel like a huge looming obstacle. And it's really easy to fall into the trap of thinking that every setback is due to how long you've been out of work. So today we're going to talk about some of the realities of job searching with a gap on your CV, some of the ways that you can keep positive and make a successful return to work. And we've got a great panel here today to share their thoughts and ideas on how to do that. So let's hear from them now. Belgin, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Belgin Okai-Somerville. I'm not an HR person, but I am an academic who does a lot of research on job search and contemporary careers. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Glasgow, Adam Smith Business School, and I'm delighted to be here.
Great. And Kira, let's hear from you next.
Yeah, hi. It's lovely to be here as well. I'm all the way over in not so sunny Dublin, so we have a very dull day today here. I've worked in HR roles across very different sectors over probably about 25 years. So I've worked in financial services. I've worked in a number of roles in not-for-profit organizations, working in social care. So I hope that I'll be able to use some of that experience as a recruiter and as someone who now I partner with organizations in my own company in working with them to improve their people strategies as well. So lovely to be here.
Brilliant. And finally, Roxy, let's hear from you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Roxy, and thank you for CIPD for having me today. I'm very glad to talk about this. I've been in HR for 5 years now. I moved to the UK from Ukraine 3 years ago due to war, and I actually had a career gap myself when I was searching for a job for a few months. So I hope that I can bring some insights from my personal experience and just that we have a great, insightful session.
Brilliant, great. So we're going to start off with a question for the audience. I think we've got one of our poll questions coming up. So the question is, what is the longest amount of time that you've been out of work? And I think we've got some options for you. Let's see if that's popping up now. Oh, no. Seems like we're having a few technical challenges there. Why don't you just tell us in the chat, what's the longest? Oh, here we go. What's the longest amount of time you've been out of work? The options are less than a year, 1 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, or over 10 years. So, I can see we're getting some really great responses. So quite a lot of people saying less than a year. which I guess it is your experience, Roxy, of just having that gap of a few months, but it's still feeling really significant.
Yes.
And we've had a few other different ones, quite a range, a couple of people over 10 years, and a few more people kind of 5 to 10. Kira, Belgin, I wonder if either of you have got any kind of, well, I suppose a question is, have either of you had a time out of work that's kind of been significant like that?
I haven't had an actual gap, but I've definitely had transitions in my career. So I've had some points at which I've changed direction, and some of the same, I suppose, challenges that you might face in terms of reorienting yourself or equipping yourself with new skills, or having to have that self-belief and confidence to be able to actually step into a new space would be very similar. But I definitely think the world has changed, as we all know, in recent times, and breaks and career gaps are not what they used to be perceived as. I think in when I started in HR and in recruitment, they had been seen as maybe a red flag or a risk, or the world of work was very different, where people went into a career for life. So if you weren't in a career for a long time, there was maybe some more questioning around that. Whereas now we're in a very fluid phase, especially post-COVID. So I think many organizations actually they welcome that kind of, I suppose, pivot in people's lives.
That's great. And actually, Kira, that kind of takes us on to our first question, which is around how employers look at a gap on a CV. And I think you've talked a bit about how it's quite different now. Is that is that something you can tell us a bit more about?
Yeah, I think it used to be something that was very linear in the past with employers, so that they like to see a very steady, natural progression, and in education as well as in employment backgrounds. But now I think the world of employment has changed dramatically, and the skills that people bring from very different experiences are seen now as much more of a, I suppose, a diverse range of contributions. So we aren't in employment now, or employers aren't looking for a full workforce of the same set of skills or the same type of background. So I think often what they will look for, and many large employers in the UK and in Ireland are actually they're making formalized programs, re-entry programs, where they're looking for people who are maybe, like the poll said, some people were out of work up to 10 years or more. So they are actually going out seeking to employ and give opportunities to people who have been out of the workforce for a long time.
Yeah, excellent. And Roxy, I wonder if you've had any experience of how employers kind of view career gaps, or I guess also in your role, if you've seen a lot of people coming in with different gaps on their CV.
I can say from my personal experience, when I had a career gap and also like being a refugee, I think it's not quite mixed, to be honest. I kind of struggled to find a job. It was, I'm not sure if it was, perception of the career gap or me being from another country, but I spent a few months like searching for jobs, having a lot of interviews that were not positive, and I couldn't find a job in HR despite like having like 3.5 years of experience at that point in HR. So I ended up just having like just basic admin role in the law firm. So I couldn't find a job in HR, and after spending like a year working there, then I could move to like my HR role. So I think I had a bit different experience, but at the end I ended up in HR. It just took me a bit like longer than it would take if I probably was like still back at home or I didn't have a career gap. But I would just say that there will always be like an employer who will believe in you, will try to understand you, will put themselves in your position. And I was happy. I was glad to find that employer who was ready to support me and ready to like put themselves in my shoes. So, and there will always be like employer like that for everyone. So don't want to discourage anyone. It just might take some time and some effort. That's I can relate to that.
Yeah, great, excellent. And so our next question is, how can we ensure that applications get through an applicant tracking system despite having a career break on a CV? So this is a question we get a lot. We get a lot of questions about applicant tracking systems. And there is a lot of misinformation out there about how they work. And there's also a lot of people that will try and tell you that there's like one little trick and then you'll get through every single system and all the systems are the same. So Kira, I wonder if you could do a bit of myth busting for us.
I think the one thing I'd say is that in all applicant tracking systems, well, for the most part, there's still generally humans that are behind the scenes. So the applicant tracking systems they're tools designed for recruiters to be able to deal with large volumes and take out some of the administrative work. And for me, as when I'm recruiting, I think where I use the applicant tracking system, and I know for most employers, they want to see, I suppose, your job description, whatever role that you've put out there for advertising. They want to see the keywords, the actual specifications that you've set out being reflected back into the CV and the application that is sent in. So that would be one really simple way of actually addressing your application is are you using the right keywords? Are you able to reflect what the job specification has done? And in terms of career gaps and how to frame those, I think being clear in your structure of your CV or your application with dates. So I think an applicant tracking system will definitely red flag if there's just no naming or kind of I suppose clarity with regards, particularly if it's a longer gap, if something is just missing. It's going to confuse the system. So what I would suggest is that for people who have been out of work for whatever reason, you frame it, and you don't have to give great detail, but you actually track it in your own experience. So if you were out for caregiving reasons or out for illness, you might just say for the years X to X, whatever your caregiving responsibilities, and whatever skills, because often during these breaks, we have other developmental kind of tools or growth opportunities. So maybe listing some of those, but just naming that in the applicant tracking system would be really helpful. And you can broaden things out maybe a little more in a cover letter. But once you're aligned to what the specification is, I think that's most of the trick.
Yeah, great, thank you. And so our next question is how to, I guess, follows on from what you were saying. So this is kind of how do you positively present a multi-year career gap due to a severe health condition that will remain a disability I need to disclose to employers? Belgin, I wonder if you could just talk us through some of how to kind of think about framing something that's been a bit of a negative situation positively. How can someone kind of start to think about that?
I will try. So I think if we take a couple of steps back, I completely agree with Roxy and Cara in that the gaps aren't anything extraordinary nowadays. And we do have a lot more gaps in our careers, let's say, compared to 2-3 decades ago. Yeah. And I think there is a growing understanding that gaps that do not necessarily mean we are not competent. we take gaps for many, many different reasons. So I think one of the starting points in our minds as we approach a job search coming out of a gap is to stop questioning our competence and start building on our career skills. And they're not necessarily the same things. How well we can do a job is not necessarily the same thing as how good we are at looking for a job. So spending more time understanding what are the different options available in the labour market, maybe also reflecting, Chiara mentioned that, you know, when we take breaks, whether that's out of choice or whether that's out of necessity, we take gaps, but things happen to us. So maybe taking a moment to reflect on what skills can we talk about as a result of this gap. It doesn't necessarily be just skills, it can be a realization. You realize that you really don't want to do something anymore, or you realize you enjoy something. So with gaps, I know we always focus on the negative side of things, but there is also positive things that I think we should acknowledge as we approach our job search as well. And once you're ready to go back into the labour market, I think trying to be as realistic as possible is also a good thing. So if you've stopped for a number of years, chances are your field has moved on. So are you on top of your field? What do you need to do to maybe get back on track, etc. So, and it's not easy being realistic if you haven't been inside. So, and I guess we'll talk about other ways such as networking, etc. But talking to other people is always a good option. And I'll stop there and let the industry experts chip in as well, but I can come back.
Yeah. Chiara, I wonder if you've got any thoughts about that, particularly around the kind of having to disclose a disability as well as talking about the gap. Is there a kind of a best foot forward way of doing that, as it were?
Yeah, I think you have to be, I suppose, careful for yourself as well. So you have to consider, what are you comfortable in sharing? So the level of detail that you might want to share it's different for everyone. So and whose right is it to know, you know, in detail what the reasons for your break was. So it's about being, you know, comfortable and actually being okay with sharing if you are going to give some additional detail, and for everyone that will vary. But also, like Belgaman's saying, is to actually reflect on what it is that you actually learned. So as a person, how did you grow during that time? And sometimes, you know, particularly if you've had a break because of something out of your control, circumstances that were not expected, or, you know, you didn't, I suppose, necessarily anticipate, it can cause doubt and self-doubt. And it's about actually saying, well, you came through that, what levels of resilience, and resilience is often used as, you know, too commonly as a word and as a skill, but what resilience did you take from that, and how have you grown as a person? But yeah, I would be careful about having to feel obliged to overshare. You know, employers have very strongly guided limitations on what they can ask and what they can, you know, question in an application or an interview as well. So just to remember that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And so our next question is kind of on a similar theme, but just a slightly different situation. So someone says, if you've taken time out to care for a family member, what should you say? So I guess this is, again, a similar thing of how do you begin to tell that story of your gap? Belgin, should we come back to you? Because I think you were kind of beginning on quite an interesting thing there.
I think where I left off, if that's what you're referring to, Zoe, the power of networking, I think, is where I was talking about. And when we use the word networking, it's often almost like a scary term for many of us, including myself back in the day, until I realized is really just talking to people and understanding other people's experiences. Because oftentimes when these things happen, the things that happen that are out of our control, that put us out to the labour market, is very easy to, as Kira said, not only lose our confidence in ourselves, but also feel like it's only happening to us. But that's not necessarily the situation. And there is knowledge that's out there that can be shared, for instance, through the mentoring program. And there's loads of material that CIPD actually has on the website. But if you've taken time out to care for a family member, going back into work, I'm assuming on average, the care situation will still be there when you're going back into work. So my recommendation there is for thinking about the job search process, not only as you getting into work, but also trying to find a good match that satisfies your current needs and expectations in your working life. So what does that mean? Will the employer be able to accommodate whatever caring responsibilities you may still carry on when you get back to work? So in an interview situation, for instance, as Kieran said, share as much as you are comfortable sharing. And remember that secret word that employers can actually, they are restrained by law for asking many different questions. So keep that in mind. But also, it's a two-way process. It's a process for you to judge whether this new employment situation will be able to accommodate your now changed needs. So I would use, for instance, an interview situation to gauge whether you would like to work there as well, because you don't want to be in a situation where 2 weeks in and you realize, no, this is not working out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it, that part of how you talk about it is also about how an employer reacts and whether or not that's going to be a good fit. And because I think one thing we don't talk about enough in job searching is that it's not just searching for any job that will take you. It's about searching for a job that you want also, and that you have something to offer. And it's, yeah, it can feel sometimes like all the power is with the employers, but don't forget you do still have your own power and your own agency in that sense. Yeah, great. So our next question is on a similar theme. So we've put all of these kind of three together because they're all about the kind of how do you talk about different aspects of your career break. So the next question is, if you took a career break due to burnout, what is the best way to positively spin this when looking for work? Roxy, I wonder if you've got any thoughts about this in terms of just, yeah, how you can talk about having had like a negative work experience and that's why you've kind of had time out.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's quite similar to your previous questions and what we were talking about. I think the key is to be honest about the situation, so address the situation that it happened, but present it like more balanced. Maybe don't go to over details. Don't blame the previous employer, but rather I think just like shift it to the positive side in terms of like, what did you do during this career break? What did you learn? Maybe you took some courses, you upskilled. Just turn it to something positive. And also, I feel like, I think burnout is quite common these days, unfortunately, and it's not that like a red flag anymore when people talk about it. And I feel like if you made that choice, it speaks that you are taking care of your well-being, and employers who value well-being and values healthy workplace will understand that, appreciate that, and won't question it that much. So I think, again, the key is just turn it into something positive and show the employer that you've done like your inner work and you're ready to come back. You feel energized, balanced, and yeah, I think that should work great.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. Kira, did you have anything to add about that, about kind of talking about negative work experiences?
I think Roxy's points are really well made, and it is about actually, being very true to yourself and recognizing your own self-care strategy in whatever, and like Belgin said, be careful about, what role you're considering. I had a thought as Roxy was talking, thinking, it's likely that anyone sitting at the interview table is also at risk of burnout. It's something that is universal now, especially since the pandemic. So, again, sometimes we think when we're applying and kind of we're on that side of the table that we're the ones in need, but often your interview panel, they're made up of humans who are also struggling with life events and difficulties, who may have had career breaks themselves. So I suppose to again trust that you're dealing with humans at the end of the day, and who hopefully can relate. And I think framing things is really important. So again, on a CV, you might frame it as a sabbatical, a wellness break, or and really concentrate on what growth, what skills, what learning, how are you richer for the break as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you so much. So we've got another question for our audience coming up. Oh, here we go. I don't know if can people answer this by typing? Yes. So what is something positive that you have gained from being out of work? So we kind of saw earlier that quite a lot of you guys in the audience have had time out of work for various lengths of time. What is something positive that you've gained from that? Oh, I can see resilience coming up. That's great. That's just what we were talking about. Opportunity to volunteer, that's brilliant. Big fan of people getting time to volunteer. Oh, several people saying perspective. Realizing that slowing down is a positive, which really ties into what Roxy was saying about being kind of ready to go back. Lots of really great things. Career focus, redirection, time to recharge and establish my expectations. Oh, really fantastic. Great things. Oh, someone's discovered their identity. Even better. Fab. New skills. Even that's great. So I think you can see how great these things are about just the value that sometimes having time out of work can be. Not all of the value that you bring into employment comes from employment. Sometimes that can come from not being in employment. I think we all know that instinctively, but sometimes it really helps to kind of write that down. I think these things are really great. I wonder if any of you three had anything that you picked out here that looks particularly good or interesting.
I'll maybe chip in here, Zoe. I should have said I'm not on a career break at the moment, but I am on a sabbatical, which releases me from some duties of my work, and I can relate to a lot of the things on the list. New skills, even identity. Part of the skills that I've been released of are to do with teaching, for instance, and I'm now refiguring my research identity as well. So having that time off is actually, as Chiara mentioned earlier, in a way could be an opportunity to find out positive things about your career. So a lot of it resonates with the last few months that I've been spending in sabbatical as well.
Great. Yeah, well, that's great to hear. So you can really resonate with these things. I hope everyone in the chat could see all the responses. I'm afraid this is a slightly new platform for me, so I apologize if some of that wasn't coming up for you all. Great. So back to our questions. So our next question is how to overcome the lack of confidence and self-belief in one's worth in resuming work after a longer gap. So we know that having a career gap can really knock your confidence when you start looking for work again. So how can people really build that confidence back up? Roxy, I can see you're nodding, so I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, even when I had career gap for a few months, honestly, that felt longer for me, because every day is the same. At least it was for me, and just like endless interviews, and that's it. I think the important thing is, first of all, to focus and like remember what you have achieved so far. So just put your career in perspective and what you gained so far, and don't let that gap define your value, and just focus on your experience and what can you bring to the next role. And yes, it sometimes it can be frustrating, but I think it's just a simple thing to keep going, keep applying, keep having interviews, sometimes taking smaller steps, whatever you feel comfortable. Just I think it's important to remember and reflect on your past achievements and keep that in mind. And just don't let that gap, for whatever reason it happened, like define your self-worth as a professional. That's how I felt.
That's great, thank you. And I can see Violet in the chat has said, it helps being consistent and disciplined, I've found, with my job search and the way my days are structured. I think that's really true, isn't it? What you were saying about every day felt the same. I think you need to put that structure in, don't you?
Yeah. And I wanted to add about networking, as Belgian was saying. I think it's quite important to talk to people who had similar experience. For example, few of my friends had career gaps as well. And for example, my friends from Ukraine who also moved to another countries, we kind of all had career gaps. So it just helps to talk to people who has similar experiences, understanding you're not alone. And as we were talking, like having career gaps nowadays is quite common. So there's nothing to be ashamed about or feeling uncomfortable about. And just share it with people. It'll give you more confidence for sure.
Yeah, great. Kira, did you have anything to add on that?
I think in a very practical sense, just create a daily kind of set of wins or small tasks that you have within your control to say, you mightn't be able to control all the things, but I do it every day, and some of the tasks are so boring and really simple, but I procrastinate a lot. So and I also, I think I've pivoted again into running my own company, and I'm getting used to lots of knockbacks and rejections, and some wins as well. So what I have to make sure that I can do what's in my power, and maybe, and I don't say it lightly, but let go of the other side. So if and be confident, like we said at the very start of the session, there will be an employer that matches you. And I have, in my 25 years or longer, I've had many knockbacks, and now looking back, when the door opened to different opportunities and it felt like it was never going to open, it was the right door. So have that trust and confidence, and give yourself an opportunity to be around positive people as well.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice about finding the positive people in your life and being around them. I love the having a list of things to tick off as your achievements. I think it's really easy when you're not working and when you're looking for work to feel like there's just one achievement and that's going to be getting the job, and everything leading up to that is a failure if it doesn't end in that. And I think it's so important to keep focused on the that end result, on the how to be positive day to day, and how to make sure that you're feeling good each day, instead of thinking, why haven't I heard back? Because we know how dispiriting that can be. Great. So our next question, and I'm going to ask you this, Belgin, is how do I turn my career gaps and different career pathways into effective transferable skills? So how can someone kind of bring together all the different things that they've been doing, either not in work or in work, and
Mhm.
kind of think about that in an effective way of thinking about their transferable skills?
I think we started mentioning some of these early on as well, but obviously when you get to selling yourself for a job, you will need to convince the employer that that you have the skills that are required for the job. Not only find an employer that matches your expectations, etc., but also, you know, you want to be able to do that job properly, whatever it is you're applying for. So some of the things we've already talked about, you know, when we take time out, whether that's for out of choice or not, we often end up doing many different things. Many different things could look like only caring for someone in our family, but even that also has many different things involved in it. So that reflection that we mentioned early on, about, you know, what is it we've been doing in the last year, 6 months, 3 years, however long that we've been out. And we often disregard some of these things that if they're not unpaid, if they're not paid. So things like our volunteering roles, our hobbies, the clubs that we've been involved in, etc. So it's really reflecting on, and some of the things are actually even more objective than that. You know, some of us actually take part in various courses or, you know, the various ways of continuous professional development opportunities. They're easier to demonstrate. The ones that are more difficult to demonstrate are the ones that we take for granted, the ones that are unpaid. So reflecting on all of those unpaid things that we've done, that we've filled our time with, and it could be really just sticking there and trying to find that job day after day, as Roxy was saying, and it could look very much like repeating yourself. But even there, you could talk about resilience, persistence, etc. So what is it that I can get out of all of these experiences? That reflection, I think, comes back to me again. But also keeping in mind that when we're talking about the different pathways, keeping in mind, you know, from our gap today, tomorrow is not going to be necessarily where we want to be in our career. Not for many of us. It often involves baby steps. Yeah, often involves understanding, you know, what is it you're getting into, maybe trying to build up skills one way or another, maybe through quantifiable, objective ways. It could be certificates, it could be short courses, etc. But realizing that, or recognizing that, it's not going to happen overnight. We talked about finding our identity. It's not going to happen overnight that you're going to move out from your carer position or your burnout position today and tomorrow into a fulfilled job. Yeah. So it's really kind of also reflecting on, or coming up with a plan, maybe a realistic plan. So what are the steps that are involved in getting you there? And again, talking to people, maybe seeking that mentorship through CIPD. CIPD isn't paying us to promote mentorship, but I have been involved on the other end, and I find it very, very helpful. That's why I keep mentioning it. It's really, as I say, recognizing the baby steps or initial steps, or what could be the steps or stages that could get you from your current position to where you want to be, recognizing it's not necessarily going to happen overnight.
Yeah, and I think that's a kind of a key thing about transferable skills, isn't it? Sometimes you need to think about how to transfer them so you can demonstrate them in a different environment first, and then build up to whatever's next. Kira, what's your kind of perspective from the kind of employer's perspective, I guess, of transferable skills? How can someone bring all those things together and demonstrate them really well?
I think anything that involves a commitment, an ongoing commitment. So volunteering is one of those things that when I see it on a CV, I think, because that's the ultimate commitment, is to volunteer to do something, to give your time, turn up consistently, sometimes doing, you know, difficult tasks, Or, you know, I think of anyone that coaches or volunteers at their park run, or, you know, in bad weather and, you know, has to stand around for a long time. That to me shows a real, you know, tenacity and something that I would like in a team if I'm recruiting. Other skills, I think that you can definitely you can transfer to any role, any employment, is the interpersonal, so teamwork skills, and a lot of those volunteering roles will involve some level of social interaction. So your communication skills, even when I think of if someone has been caregiving, and I think of the amount of project management and, you know, multitasking that goes on, the commitment to be able to manage, you know, someone's schedule and support them in lots of different activities. And that to me is, you know, it's an incredible kind of piece of experience. So anything that I think can show that you'll be a good team member, you're going to be reliable, you're going to turn up, and you're going to be able to communicate with other people on the team. That's what an employer wants. So, you know, just to remember that, you know, it doesn't have to be, like Belgin has said, it doesn't have to be paid employment for that.
Yeah, that's great. Right. And so we've got our next question, which kind of, I guess, slightly follows on from this and certainly picks up on something we've been saying a lot around networking. And I'm going to come to you, Roxy, about this. So what is the best way to approach LinkedIn or other platforms when searching for a new role after a career break? So how can someone get going on those kind of, that sort of like social media, the networking space, I guess, let's say generally?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, LinkedIn, I think, is a very powerful tool. I found all my jobs through LinkedIn. And in terms of updating your profile, I think they have option now to put like a career break as a like, not a place to work, but like in chronological order. So I think it's important to put that, as we were talking about, just being honest, and just, if you feel comfortable, put like a few words. Why did you have like a career break? So for recruiter who is seeing your profile, they can clearly see that. And you can also add a title. So for example, it can be like HR professional, open to new opportunities. And then you can add a summary after the title of your achievements, your job experience, and just again add like open to new opportunities. So that's in terms of your profile, and you can add skills at the end. And also in terms of networking, just basically engage with posts, engage with communities that are interesting for you, engage with companies, and just basically, if you just grow your network, just add people from your previous workplaces, colleagues of colleagues. You never know how it's going to work out. And for example, if you feel comfortable, you can just like share a post that I'm currently on a career break, I'm open for new opportunities. And I know it worked out great for a lot of my friends. For example, if they post something and somebody from their network, is looking for this particular person, and they were able to find a job. So that's quite, I think, a powerful tool, powerful community still. So just I would just advise to use it to maximum.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I guess so we ran a webinar last year about the best ways to use LinkedIn. And one of the tips that's really stayed with me, which you've just kind of covered, was about you don't have to do loads of posts. You can just do a bit of reacting and commenting, and people will eventually just recognize your name. And that just helps to get you kind of just a bit more up there in the in kind of people's minds. Belgin, you've mentioned the importance of networking. I wonder if you could just talk to us a bit more about that and how people might go about it.
I can actually. Recently, we've done a study. We talked about over 80 job seekers and how they use social media in general to understand exactly this question. And we found, not too surprisingly, but there was a significant group of people who use social media, particularly LinkedIn, to learn from other people. They're not necessarily very, very active there. They're not. It's those of us who don't feel too comfortable being out loud in public. Yeah, but there's a lot of learning from other people. As Roxy said, it could be your colleague from your previous job, or it could be your friend from school, or their friend, or it could be a celebrity that you find whose career quite interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of observational learning that you can actually do in terms of what's going on in the world of work, what's going on in your own area. And these people tend to be more likely what we ended up calling purists. They represent themselves as they are. They don't try to be someone else to fit into different jobs. Yeah? And then we've got players who play the system, who present themselves in certain ways, thinking these are the people that are wanted, or these are the skills that are wanted in the areas, and both in their own right find meaningful ways. So there is no right or wrong, because people approach social media and job search in general however way they feel comfortable. So it's not necessarily one way is better than the other. It's really how people approach and how people are more comfortable. And there's a lot of kind of networking opportunities that doesn't require any effort at all, apart from clicking a button or connecting with somebody on LinkedIn. There's also a lot of learning opportunities that you could do, say, via courses on LinkedIn. There's also courses on how to use LinkedIn for the better. And I think we should also remember that LinkedIn operates based on algorithms. So as Roxy said, the more you feed into LinkedIn about yourself, the keywords that Chiara was mentioning in terms of putting into your application forms, it's a similar thing with LinkedIn and I guess other social media platforms that are geared towards employment and careers. So the more you put in about your interests, the more likely that you will get opportunities related to those interests, etc. And again, you can share as much or as little as you want. And one of the key things is you can put yourself as open to work, which then signals to recruiters or headhunters that you are open to work and they can approach you about it. So it also saves some of the effort on your end to kind of actively go and approach people. And one other thing, if I may add, in terms of research findings, and this is nothing new, but the reason platforms like LinkedIn are effective is because they build on what we call weak links. So job search research shows that it's not necessarily your mum or your dad or your closest people that are instrumental in getting you the job that you will like or you will find enjoyable. It's the people that are kind of further away in your network. So through word of mouth, or someone recognizes your name, or something you do resonates with someone else, etc. It's those further links that are often more instrumental in finding jobs. And I think the beauty of LinkedIn comes in there because you're not networking with your mom or dad. It's networking with the professionals in the right places.
That's really great. Thank you. And really interesting to hear about that research because, yeah, I think like whenever you think of networking, you think it must be people that you know really well who are going to get you a job. So yeah, super kind of, it's great to hear that it's kind of more your wider network, and those weak links, as you put them, are going to be the ones that really unlock that. Kira, I wonder if you've just got any quick thoughts about networking while we're on this.
Yeah, and I think like it's been said, networking is a scary term. It sounds hard. But I see it as it's really just staying connected, and again recognizing that there are lots of people that can help you on your path, and people you know, and also people you don't know. So that's the power of that platform, and it opens up so many opportunities. I've seen it to good effect, where particularly for those of us that might be older, that you can actually connect or reconnect with people you may not have worked with for a long time, and people still remember, different roles where you may have been colleagues, and they may now be working somewhere else, that there's opportunity, or they know someone who knows someone. So it's about, and like you said from the previous webinar, it's remembering you don't have to post, because that can be quite difficult sometimes, but it's about actually liking and following, and giving some kudos, as they say. And I know it's so cheesy, but giving recognition to other people, because I think that always comes back in a positive way. So, being interested in other people, and being interested in the industry that you're looking to seek a role in. So if it's social care, if it's HR, if it's following those groups, joining the groups, doing the training, as Belgin said, it's a very good platform to actually do your networking. But the other add-on, and we've said it already, is don't forget your human network as well. And I've seen some great opportunities where people and it could be from your volunteering or your social side, they know something that may be of interest to you. So don't be afraid to put it out there in your own personal network as well.
Great, yeah. So we've had a question in the chat, which was, how can I overcome the mental blocks that are preventing me from fully engaging with my learning due to a long career break? So I guess it's some of that, like how can someone get re-motivated again to at least start a kind of, and I assume they're talking about a learning that's then going to lead to work. How can someone overcome that kind of, that lack of motivation? Roxy, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think it's just probably take step by step, not to overload yourself with information. For example, this year I've completed my CIPD 5, and I was in touch with other people in my group who were studying for it. And for some of them, they were, for example, taking care of their children, so they were doing this during that, or not learning for a very long time. So I saw it that for some people it was quite difficult, and I think it just taking step by step, allowing yourself more time, not like comparing yourself to other how fast they were doing it. Because, for example, I finished university not that long ago, so I'm still in that studying mode. But I know for people who are older, this can be quite challenging. So I think it just taking step by step, allowing yourself more time, not to be discouraged if it's not happening, from the first time you're remembering everything or you getting everything right, but just being kind and gentle to yourself. And I think within a time, you'll improve, and the process, it will be easier, and the learning will be easier and more enjoyable as well.
Great, thank you. And Belgin, I was going to go to you, but you've appeared twice on my screen, so I don't know if you're having some technical challenges.
I've decided to go on my mobile because I think my wireless has given up. Apologies.
That's it. Well, if the connection stays okay, I was wondering, from your kind of experience in terms of teaching, like how do you have any advice for someone who's really struggling to get back into learning, and how to kind of motivate themselves to get on with it?
In terms of teaching, as in going back into education or going into education, or
in terms of so someone is struggling with their to get back into education, in terms of mentally they're struggling, how can they kind of motivate themselves to kind of, I guess, get on with their learning?
I think there's two questions there because as we said with burnout, also issues to do with mental health is more and more common, both in education as well as in employment as well. So I guess if someone is struggling with mental health issues, the first question there is, are they ready to get back into, or are they ready to get into these things? Because last thing you want to do is push yourself for something that's going to set you further back as well. But if the answer is yes, that the time is right and they're ready, and one of the things that I've increasingly started doing with my students is I'm asking them a lot of motivation related questions. Why are you here? What brought you here in the first time? What is it you wanted to do? Questions such as, imagine your retirement party. What is it they're talking about yourself? Some of these things are from coaching practice, and I'm not a coach myself, but it's really questions that I try to prompt my students to, or anyone who comes to me about going back into or going into education, is trying to understand where the motivation comes from, because when we lack that insight about ourselves, then it's very easy to lose motivation that was already weak in the beginning. It's also a lot more easier to end up burnt out because we take on many different things, or things that aren't necessarily aligned with our goal. So it's really trying to see what is it that sparks an interest in people before we head out into a new direction, basically, if someone's looking into going into education, etc.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. So I think we're just about coming up to the end of our time. We have got an evaluation form that we'd love for all of our attendees to fill out. I'm going to copy that link and pop it in the chat. I'm sure some of my colleagues will have it up. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that Corinne has shared it. I'll also share it as well, just to make sure it's there. If you could fill out that 3-minute survey, just let us know what you thought of today's session. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go around all three of our lovely panelists and ask for one final thing that they'd want people to take away from today's session. Kira, I'm going to start with you.
I think from the chat earlier, the poll earlier, what really came out to me was the perspective, the word perspective. So it's having that in all aspects of this. So and not underestimating the experiences that you've gained through your break, and the value that they bring to any workplace. So to really celebrate that.
Great, thank you. And Roxy, how about you?
I would say don't let a gap define your value and your professional skills, your professional experience, and let it question yourself as a professional. And I think it's important to remember that you control the narrative. So it's not about what happened, but what you did with it, what you did with this time, and how you present this to the employer. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, and finally, Belgin.
I think on top of all things that have been said, I can maybe say searching for a job is a process, and so is a transition, so is a career transition. So be realistic and be easy on yourself, be clear about your direction, and talk to people. Talk to people about, doesn't necessarily mean talking to professionals, but talking to people about where you are, where you want to go, etc.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that really sums up, I guess, one of the key messages we want people to take away, which is just being kind to yourself is so important. And I think particularly, job searching is hard. No, let's not sugarcoat it. It can be really demoralizing, but it's really important to look after yourself. And in a lot of ways, that is the thing that is going to get you that job in the end. It's about being kind to yourself is that kind of a key ingredient going all the way through. So do hang on to that. And I can see someone in the chat saying good luck to everyone, so I would also say that to all of you. Well, thank you so much all for joining us today on this kind of slightly, well, certainly rainy here lunchtime. And it's particularly huge thanks to our panel, Belgin, Roxy and Kira. You've all been great. And yeah, I hope good luck with everyone's job search and have a lovely rest of the day.